The Warsaw Ghetto was the largest of all the Jewish ghettos in Nazi-occupied Europe during World War II. Construction on the wall began on April 1, 1940. On October 16, 1940, the German Governor-General Hans Frank ordered the Jews to enter the ghetto. Around 400,000 people lived in the ghetto, which was about 30% of Warsaw's population. The ghetto was only 2.4% the size of Warsaw. Thousands of people living in the ghetto died from diseases or starvation. Many of the people were unemployed in the ghetto. Those with jobs likely worked illegally. Life, however, was filled with educational and cultural activities such as schools, hospitals, public soup kitchens, orphanages, refugee centers, and recreational facilities, all of which were done illegally. Life in the ghetto was unbearable for many. Overcrowding was very common. One apartment could have up to several families living in it at once. Plumbing was also very poor. Garbage and human waste were thrown into the streets. People were always hungry because the Germans deliberately tried to starve residents by allowing them to only purchase small amounts of bread, potatoes, and fat at a time. Some people smuggled in money or things with value that they could trade or sell for food. Others had to beg and steal just to survive. Heating fuel and warm clothes were scarce for the long and cold winters. Dead bodies littered the streets. In the summer of 1942, about 300,000 Jews were deported from Warsaw to Treblinka. Other people living in the ghetto heard reports of mass murder of the people who had been recently deported. On January 18, 1943, almost 4 months without deportations, the Germans entered the ghetto and intended on deporting many people living in the ghetto. The Warsaw fighters fired upon the German troops as they tried to round up another group to deport. The Warsaw Fighters were a group of young people who formed an organization called the ZOB. The group was led by 23-year-old Mordecai Engelevich. Even though the fighters had only a small supply of weapons that had been smuggled into the ghetto, they had won the battle against the Germans. After a few days, the Germans retreated. This victory gave the fighters inspiration for future resistance. On April 19, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began after police and German troops entered to deport survivors. 750 resistance fighters fought the well-equipped and trained German military. On May 16, 1943, the revolt ended. About 56,000 Jews were captured. 7,000 of those were shot, and the remaining others were deported to camps. The Germans had slowly defeated the Warsaw fighters.